Holy One, we come to you today to ask for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of the community. Fill us with your grace, O Lord God, as we make decisions that affect the citizens of this proud county. And continue to remind us that all we do here today and all that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. First item is a roll call.
Clifton.
Here.
Fitch. Here. Stancil. Here.
All present. And a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Diane, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Heather, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item of business is a public hearing. Can I have a motion to enter into a public hearing for minor subdivision to be known as Quail Ridge Subdivision?
So moved. I'll second that.
Motion by Heather, second by Diane. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of entering a public hearing at 10:03 a.m. indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Motion carries. Ryan, everything's been published as required?
Yes.
Did you receive any written comments other than the two that you shared with us?
Yeah, just the two from the conservation and the soil water conservation.
Very good. Give us an overview.
Okay, so Alan Hanson is the applicant, also the property owner of this parcel. Tract of land is 31.31 acres. Looking to divide it 4 times to create 4 lots. Board of Supervisor approval is required on this request. Current legal use, this parcel does not contain any building structures at this time and appears to have been used for grass hay production and potentially been pastured for livestock in prior years. Some history on it. Richard Friedman purchased this tract of land on contract from Bradley and Kathy Wilford for $100,000 in June of 2014. Mr. Friedman fulfilled the contract in August of 23 when he sold the tract to Alan Hayes for $300,000. This portion does not have any FEMA flood zone area within the 1%, the 100-year flood zone. Staff has determined that the CSR2 of this property is 45.85, which is under the 70 CSR2 rating called out in our current comprehensive plan. The plat is within the 2-mile radius of the city of East Beirut. Therefore, resolution number 218 was approved by the City Council on the 16th of January. There's access drives. They've got 4 of them off of County Road, Quail Ridge Avenue, and they've all been approved by the County Engineer's Office. Permits number 2379 through 2382.
So 4 driveways and they're all separate.
Yes. And that is what I have.
Are they coming off the same road?
Yes, they're all off of Quail Ridge Avenue.
Okay. Diane or Heather, do you have any questions for Ryan? Anyone from the public wish to comment regarding this hearing? Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address. You have up to 10 minutes.
My name is Ilana Friedman. My husband Richard and I are abutters. Our address is 2672 Quail Ridge Avenue. My husband and I are abutters to this property. In fact, we are former owners, and we sold it to Mr. Hayes in August. I originally met Mr. Hayes when he came to look at the property, and he told me he wanted to build a house for his son there. And I told him about the property. I told him that there was a lot of wildlife there, which we had encouraged, deer and pheasants and quail and so forth. And he seemed to be very pleased about that. He said his son loved to hunt and wanted to, and would be pleased that he could hunt on his own property. And judging from what he said, it seemed like it was a reasonable fit, and we were comfortable with it. Until Friday, this past Friday, when we got a letter from the board saying that this property was actually going to be subdivided and would have not one house but four. And that was not what we bargained for, it's not what we signed up for, and we were very upset about it. This is a unique piece of property. We had originally intended to hold on to it forever, but last year my husband got very sick, and I realized that by myself I would not be able to handle the 50 acres that we then owned. So we decided to sell this parcel. But it's a very unique parcel. It's unique historically, and it's unique ecologically. Historically, it was part of a land grant that was awarded in 1886, right after the end of the Civil War. I'm sorry, 1866, right after the end of the Civil War, and by a man named William Fenimore, who was a leading pioneer in Madison County. He purchased, or this land grant gave him access to several hundred acres of farmland. And he cultivated it. He was a farmer, and he farmed all of it, with one exception. He did not farm this particular parcel. And the reason is partly because it's not flat like the surrounding area. It's a hill that goes like this, from south to north. And so he did not touch it. And since he was working the land, and then after he died, his children worked the farm until the end of the 20th century. And then it was purchased, and then we purchased it. What's special about this property is also that because it wasn't cultivated for so many years, 140 years, we found out that it still is something very special. The people came over from conservation and walked the property several times, and they identified a host of prairie flowers and vegetation, and they were very excited about it. They said, what you have here is our jewel, and please protect it, because we are losing prairie at a rapid rate in Iowa, and what you have is very special. And that's what we did for the last 11 years. We took care of it, and we disturbed it as little as possible. Another thing is that Quail Ridge Avenue, the name Quail Ridge Avenue sounds like a busy thoroughfare, but it's actually a very short block of a gravel road. There are only 3 houses on it, and then at the end of one end is a dead end, the other end is open to G53, and at the end of that of this very short road is another house. So there are 4 families living on this road, and surrounding it are thousands of acres of farmland. Where we live, we cannot see another house, front, back, in any direction, and we're at least 5.5 miles from any paved road. This is a very isolated part of Madison County. There's no Casey's, there's no McDonald's, or there's no drugstore, there's nothing. Any services that we want, we go into town for. And so why we are upset is that we understand that that if this project is approved, as soon as construction begins, all of the living remnants of Iowa prairie will be destroyed forever. And that is something that we are not happy with, particularly since we didn't think that the plan was to subdivide the property. I also want to say that I think that this area is inappropriate for a subdivision. It's, as I said, it's a tiny little microcosm of people. 4 families living close to each other. Each property, however, is associated with acreage, and so we have acreage, and Our neighbors have acreage, and what we want is to keep this area the way it was, and that's what we thought we were doing. By keeping these at one unit parcels, particularly this one, which is so precious. So, for all those reasons, Richard and I object to this treatment of the land, this design, and I hope that the board will understand the value of preserving the prairie and will not approve this subdivision in its present form. Thank you very, very much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
All right, anyone else wish to comment on this matter? Yes, sir.
I'm Richard Friedman, 2672 Quail Ridge Avenue. I'll be brief. Basically, we considered about selling the property because of its value. We got this offer almost immediately after it went on the market, and I felt good about it because it sounded like it was going to be kept in a similar situation. And I was, again, as my wife said, we were very upset to read about the proposed subdivision.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment on this matter?
My name is Richard Weinbrenner, 2651 265th Street. I'm just north of the property. I'm probably outside of the 500-foot limit myself personally. My sister-in-law does own the property right across the road west from this property. She's not happy with this. Her daughter, who is the inheritance, will have the inheritance of the property when her mother's gone. It's already written up that way. She doesn't want this. If she ever wanted to move out here and have a piece of property, a house out there, she'd be moving out of town into another town. The other thing is, as those folks have mentioned, and I have no reason to doubt what she says, or Richard, either one, that the arrangement was not what they're being presented with today. I always like to have, it's good to have neighbors, but it's good to have good neighbors that you can trust. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone else wish to comment?
My name is Craig Rudolph. I live at 2708 Quail Ridge Lane, just south of the property. And they told me what they had planned, and I already told them I wasn't very proud of what they had in mind, but I didn't really know if I could do anything about it or not. But I'm really not for it, because I moved back out there because it's where I grew up, in that neighborhood. And, you know, houses are few and far between through there, and I like that. And I sure as hell don't want 4 houses beside it. So that's all I got.
Sir, what was your name again?
Craig Rudolph.
Greg Rudolph?
Craig.
Great.
Okay. Anyone else wish to comment?
Is anyone here for the subdivision that wants to speak?
Good morning. I'm Alan Hayes, the owner of the property. A couple of things. We don't plan to build anything on there for a few years. This was a family situation, as was mentioned. There was my grandson that was looking for a property, and so we never intended it to just be one property, one resident. lots, so, there's not gonna be a destroying of plants and animals, because they're large lots. And, I want to maintain that as much as we can. I recognize that she had mentioned too that this is a property that hadn't been touched for 10, 11 years.
140.
Yeah, and before that, I think it was pasture, but it hadn't been plowed or planted or anything. So, there was never an intent not to divide this. We always intended that in the beginning. My grandson will be transferred some of the 10 acres of the property will be his. Once this is all completed. So, I understand the concerns. We are also, want to be in communication with the farmers in the area, because I know there's concerns about having residences such as this. And farmers have those concerns, and we want to work with them to make sure that their concerns are taken care of. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, I just have a question. On lot 3, it says net acres 2.73. Does that need a 3 acre requirement? Or is that just, does that take into account for the setback? On the map you gave us.
So that would be net acres, that wouldn't include the road right of way. So
Okay.
the road right of way would be included in that, making it greater
Making it
than,
3.
greater than 3.
Okay. So how are the driveways on lot 2 and lot 4 gonna come out?
So they're what a planner would call a flag lot. They do own the 40-foot required width of road frontage. One being that 40 foot, and the other one being 58. But then, yeah, they will drive by the first lots 1 and 2, and the way the plat sets, they would build homes behind those.
Is there any way to have all 4 access the same egress on the Quail Ridge?
Could we make one, I love that idea, could we make one driveway and then into this subdivision? I have a lot of concerns.
It would be nice to have one driveway, but I think that's where we get into ordinances, something like this right now.
Well,
that's
we
not the case.
can make requirements, we can stipulate the driveways, where the driveways go, could we not?
Correct. And that's one of the reasons that we send this to the engineer to review proposed driveways, and then if they have recommendations, and having it down to 1 or 2 entrances, then we would make that. But they approved all 4 of those. So, but you're right, Heather, in the fact that you can kind of set guidelines for it, as long as you have a reason to do so.
I would love to see limited driveways, and I think,
Plus less driveways would disturb less ground.
it does, and it creates, if you go down these new subdivisions, if you put a brook here, and then the runoff from the driveways is really hard on our roads. It also needs to be conveyed that this is on a rock quarry road, and it's gonna be really dusty, and I don't wanna get calls ripping my head off because their road is dusty and they want us to pave it. Not gonna get paved. And that's what happens, these people move out here and they don't realize this is a rock and they've got a long ways to go to town. But I really like to see if that would be agreeable, to limit the driveways if you could.
Well, we can require that.
I think I
It's
would like
already-
to see that.
It's already platted, and I get the shared driveway situation, but that creates a whole other issue with the shared driveway that 4 people have to try to figure out how to maintain together and whatnot.
That could be written in
Moving
easements.
forward, I think that's something to consider, but since this is already platted, I think,
Well, in the past, we have lots of subdivisions in our county now that share a driveway.
and we have lots of ones that are like this that have multiple.
We have a lot to do.
But I think it's within our power to require that change. Also too, is this, in your opinion, Ryan, is this compliant with our current comprehensive plan regarding conservation?
I don't think we have anything in, I mean, besides bringing up the points that there is remnant there, in our comprehensive plan, what is drawn out to
We don't have.
enable us to say no.
Okay.
Well, and statistically, Iowa is one of the most altered landscapes in almost the world, because we were 89% prairie, we're nothing. Mark, you asked to speak.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we did consider,
Could you come up here, please?
sure. We did think about, having fewer driveways, we did consider that, and we talked to Mike, and then, he had somebody come out with me, and we walked through it and talked about it. And we felt like it would be better to have the four, one big reason being what he said, Phil, that, you have shared driveways, you have, then the engineers get calls on fighting, and who clears the snow, and who doesn't, and we just felt like it was better if there was four. And when we went out there and we planned it, we looked at elevation, as you know, the county has really strict requirements on runoff and elevation for the driveways, so we've got all those planned. We're currently looking at talking to some contractors that have done it before, that'll do it right, to make sure that we don't have runoff into the wrong areas, so that's why we didn't do fewer driveways. It's just, then there's also calls for people that, get upset because they can't share a driveway.
I would like to make sure that the driveways are drivable. If you're on an ambulance, we have driveways in this county, they're just awful, and you can't get an ambulance up them.
We went on the wider side of the
Okay.
requirements, so we're keeping them wide, we're making sure there's no obstructions around them, and that they meet all the requirements. So there's very detailed drawings that we got from the county that we intend on fully completing those.
So would you, and just for the record, for her, Mark Hayes. can you-
Mark Hayes, 2690 Quail Ridge Lane.
Okay. Would you consider or entertain doing some kind of conservation easement or preservation of the prairie that's on there right now?
If I'm not mistaken, there's already a requirement to do some sort of plan like that that's on the land. It carries through in the abstract of the land. So, and as my dad said, we're gonna talk to people as we, figure out how to do this and covenants and whatnot, so.
Was this under native prairie planting?
No.
It didn't, did it,
No, no.
it didn't have an easement?
There was no planting at all. This is
original.
this is a remnant of the prairie.
So there was no NRCS maintenance agreement ever, not that I can
Nothing was done
remember.
for 140 years.
Yeah.
But there's something that requires like a water runoff plan or something like that.
Oh,
that-
yeah, you'll have
It's like a
a,
Oh,
soil
yeah,
water
yeah.
conservation district thing,
Yes.
so we'll absolutely do
you'll have to
that.
sign a land disturbing affidavit.
That's it,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
that's it, yeah.
Right.
And you do want to adhere by that.
Yes,
because-
we
Well,
absolutely.
that, yeah, but the
Will that
question I had.
require, Diane, from the NRCS office, if it's prairie remnant, would it require like a sod busting from the NRCS
Yeah,
office?
I would, yes, I think you
And
might have to go.
My
with-
other question would be, given the information that was provided today, and obviously the facts that the new comprehensive plan, it appears to be a seasonal wetland on the property, and obviously remnant prairie with the potential to have conservative species present, and the information that was presented today, would it be considered to have an environmental impact assessment on the property?
I would go to the NRCS and I would do, you're gonna have to do your land disturbing affidavit and
It's
you
already
probably,
completed.
it's completed.
Land disturbing affidavit has been signed and is part of the subdivision accompanying documents.
And I check about the sod busting and just go up and make sure.
I mean, we intend to follow all the rules that we have so far and try to meet every.
Right, we're not applying that.
No, we're not.
We're not applying that.
Just wanna cover your bases.
We just wanna, I've been doing the comprehensive plan update for the last year and a half, and a lot of information has come across through this committee about how how precious a lot of our resources are in this county, and that they're slowly being eroded with development. So some of the changes we're making in the comprehensive plan is to strengthen that acknowledgement, so we can preserve something before it's completely lost. So, but at the same time, obviously, we have to balance property rights, of course. So my question to you is, knowing that, would you and your, anyone else that's developing this consider putting conservation easements on these lots in order to preserve that going forward?
Well, I can't speak for my dad, he's the owner, but I think we would consider it. We'd have to understand what that means, but I think we would consider it. I would recommend not making it a requirement because we don't even know what all that means.
Right.
You know, but we would consider it. We don't want to be bad neighbors. There was no ill will. There was no commitment. There was nothing in purchase agreement. No limit on one house. My son is going to build a house there. That's the plan. You know, and we intend to be good neighbors. There's no intent to deceive. You know, we want to follow the rules, and I think we have so far. And, you know, there's houses on the north and the south of this property already, so, you know, we don't intend to, you know, do anything wrong or destroy anything. There's a dam that's already breached in one part of the property. We talked about maybe enforcement. So we want to be good stewards of the land. There's a lot of Osage orange trees we've been cutting down and try to clean up. So I think you'd see the land would be better off.
Would you be willing to work with conservation to assist with that?
Sure, yeah, we can talk to them.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Any other comments for the hearing?
No, we accept that. One of the points I wanted to make, yeah, the quarry is close by, half a mile from my house. That's been there for 40 years. The first 40 years of it, there wasn't a great deal of movement. Sergeants, when they had it, they moved some rock. Marietta, when they had it, they just crushed road rock, and that was it. So every once in a while, it would be a push, you know, there'd be some traffic by my house. Now, these folks are moving rock, lots of rock.
And fast.
And fast. Used to be just dump trucks. These are semis now. Anyway, the road, G53, goes almost to St. Mary's, or St. Charles, I'm sorry. I've lived on that road since 1953. It's probably one of the poorest maintained roads in the county, among the poorest. It's always been rough, always has been. It's been better from my house west, but it still can be a lot of traffic. If those folks are moving out there to have a nice drive, they'll soon get tired of it real quick. In dry weather, I use my four-wheel drive once I leave the pavement all the way home, and vice versa. It's so rough, so washboardy, that if you're trying to accelerate any just a two-wheel drive, you're going to fishtail. Not on loose gravel, but just on ripples. The road isn't fit. As it is, it's not going to get any better with more housing out there. And if you're going to go to Des Moines, you're going to use that road.
Thank you. All right, if there's no other comments, that brings us to the conclusion of our public hearing. Can I have a motion to exit public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Heather, is there a second? Second by Diane, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, we are exiting public hearing at 10:32 a.m. This brings us to the public comment section of our meeting. Is there anyone wishing to speak during the public comments portion of our meeting? Anyone on the phone? Hearing none, we will move on. Next resolution is approving a establishing an opioid settlement task force. We've talked about this for a few weeks. I think this is a good step forward on how to determine how to use those opioid funds that Madison County is receiving.
Do we wanna let the folks know that they're gonna be on this board for this new meeting?
After it's approved.
After it's approved.
And then we can decide
Who's on?
who else would be on it. Basically, this would be a group that would recommend to the Board of Supervisors how to spend the opioid settlement money that the county received. And it's not a huge sum of money, like $60,000.
Now it's up to 70,
I think that's right.
yeah.
Anyway, hopefully we could do some good with that in Madison County. Can I have a motion to approve?
So, I will second.
Motion by Heather, second by Diane. Any further discussion?
Are we gonna do a resolution then after that, once we decide on the appointments?
Yeah, then we'd want to do, I would think, do it all at once, put the names on it.
Put the, yeah, kinda like we do for other
Yes,
boards.
and put, that's
Okay.
right. I think that would be the nicest. So we'll pick the committee and then we'll make a
Well,
resolution.
it's really up to, the way this reads, Madison County Sheriff or designee,
Yeah.
Board of Health or designee, Emergency Medical Services or designee, one of us, and one member at large. So,
But it would be courtesy to ask them. and get the
right,
resolution.
well, they are, if they're not wanting to serve, they would be the one that would appoint it, not us. We
Oh,
would
I see
appoint
what
one
you're
person.
saying. So, well, we would appoint one of us,
Mhm.
and then we would appoint at
And
large.
at large.
So, is it gonna do now, or are we gonna do that by resolution?
Probably by resolution later, and it's just form a committee.
Reach out.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Motion carries.
So, do you guys wanna reach out to the at-large? Do you want me to do that? How do you wanna do that?
I would wonder if there's somebody from the hospital or medical community that would be interested in doing that,
Maybe even pharmacy.
maybe?
Oh, that's a good idea. You want to pick one of the local pharmacists?
Yeah.
I can talk to
You
him.
wanna reach
do
out,
that?
Brady?
Yeah, I'll talk, I can
I'm
talk
thinking
to-
someone from the medical community.
I'll talk to Jeff in the hospital and see if anybody's.
That's a great idea.
And then
Thanks,
talk
Brady.
to both Montroses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you might ask all of them. I mean,
Well,
see-
you're only looking for one, so.
I know,
Yeah.
but
I would,
Yeah, I'll check with Jeff and see what.
I would like someone that's kind of maybe outside of Interset, so we have someone other than, because all these other folks are in Interset.
Sure,
So
sure.
if we could try to find someone outside of there, so we can have that representation too. Thank you.
All right, did we vote?
No.
All right, there's no other discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
I-
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a sheriff's resolution approving the appointment of N. Shore as a full-time dispatcher jailer. Is there a motion to approve?
So,
Motion by Diane, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Heather, all in favor, any further discussion?
no.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is a resolution approving the CDBG draw, $54,411. This is for the Turning Point project.
Is there a way to get an update on that, as to where we're at?
He sent you one. It's just a pass-through.
No, I understand that, I'm saying when. it's
Oh,
gonna be completed.
he did send a report, I think I read it, that they were having so much trouble with construction, getting stuff, people to come and done. I
Is
don't
that
remember.
something to send to you, or?
No, I think you got it. It's all with us.
It's in the packet?
Yeah,
I'm not just skip that page.
yeah, that's right. So
Yeah,
Oh, I
something
see.
that was supposed to be a
Okay.
seamless thing
Thanks.
is, seemed to be on our plate for longer than any of us expected.
I think construction seems longer.
That's, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Diane, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Heather, any further discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have two secondary roads resolutions approving wage adjustments for employees following the end of their probationary period. Do I have a motion to approve those two resolutions?
So moved.
Motion by Heather, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Diane, any further discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're at the zoning resolution approving the final plat of the minor subdivision known as Quail Ridge Heights. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Diane, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Heather. Any further discussion? We've discussed this a lot.
We have.
It seemed like the one of the contentions was the driveway, but of all the people I heard with opposition to it, the driveway wasn't their biggest concern.
It's the conservation.
It is the conservation, and it sounds like it's a very unique property, and I get that.
The issue here is, under our current ordinances, there's not a lot we can do to, as long as they've met the current zoning requirements. There's nothing that we as a board can do to restrict it, or can we add additional things onto this?
And you're open to creating conditions. So, I mean, like if you wanted to, like my second option was to continue to further date to obtain additional information. Maybe they could work with their engineer, and whether they do an environmental impact statement or work with county conservation on delineating where should not be disturbed. That's something that you guys can do.
But environmental impact statement, that would be more cost, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And working with conservation would not be?
No, they could use Steve and NRCS for free.
Right.
NRCS could send out landscape architects, they could send out, you said your pond dam was breached, they, all of that they could help him with. I don't know how high he would range, but it would help.
So,
I could ask.
So that's something that, well, I don't like the conditions on the properties. This is a unique, to your point, Mrs. Jigman, this is a unique situation where we have an opportunity to preserve some prairie that has the potential of being lost. So would the board consider putting conditions on? Of just saying, please work with conservation to ensure the maximum amount of prairie is preserved, maximum amount of conservation as possible, or something.
I would entertain that, but I would also entertain, I know you don't like this, but I would entertain knocking these driveways down to less than 4. I think all of these people have made very valid points that this is not a good road, and you're going to put possibly 12 cars a day. If you have a husband and wife and 3 kids, you have really taxed the road, and it's not a good road. They are not going to like the dust. They're not people. And I agree with Richard that you move out into the country and you just create what you left by putting 4 more houses around you. I do agree with all that. We don't have any clear ordinances that we can absolutely say no, but I would like to see those driveways changed. You can do easements and make them figure out how to keep it clean and let it be their fight. I don't want to be involved with 4 driveways, and it's just too much traffic, and it is so hard on our roads. So I would agree with some of those stipulations.
So, the problem I have with that is, to your point, Phil, no one was talking about driveways. And yes, if you reduce the number of driveways, it would reduce impact on the land. But to Mark's point, and Ryan's point, secondary roads didn't have an issue with it. And then to Mark's point, there is that issue of who clears what.
That's their
And, I mean, that could be taken care of with CCNRs, of course, but again, that's more restrictions, which I'm not comfortable with. My only concern right now is the preservation of as much prairie as we can. And I would willing to see the driveway argument to make sure that we maximize the amount of prairie preserved as we can.
I think all the driveways have taken out a lot of your prairie.
Yeah, that's true. So,
You've already, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I know the comment period is over, but if you look at the plan, the driveways are very close together. So if you put one big one, it's not gonna disturb or undisturb the land that much.
okay.
And so And the engineer did say that if you have shared driveways, you cause fights, and that they get the calls, and so it just kind of, it really wouldn't have an impact on disturbing the land. I think the broader issue is, you know, the land, the conservation practices. I mean, I think we would be okay if you approve, but then just said that we will consult with conservation people and, you know, just get advice and counsel from them as we go forward. Something like that would be, we want to respect the land. I live on a
That makes
farm.
sense, and I think most people building out there, they don't wanna mow 5 acres of land.
Right. They're not gonna go mow the whole thing, so.
Yeah. So with the board, thank you, Mark, for clarifying. Would the board consider that, making that as a stipulation requirement for approval, that we work with conservation to preserve?
We have a motion and a second on the floor right now. Anything we can say, so we'd have to
We would have
retract the
to-
second and retract the motion or amend the
Well,
motion.
you'd have to retract your motion.
I'll retract
Rescind
my
it.
motion, I'll rescind my motion,
Okay.
and take that off the floor. My new motion would be that we would approve this with because we have no ordinances that we really can't say no, that we would approve this with stipulations that they work directly with conservation, NRCS, SWCD, and Steve, would that be okay with you?
I'm fine with that.
Fine with
I mean-
that, to work directly with them to preserve as much of this native habitat and prairie that they can.
I would assume they've checked in with the NRCS office on any federal guidelines.
Can you work with them and make sure they're going to the right places? Because not everybody knows that.
Well, SWCS commented on it. So yeah.
SWCD sent a pretty good, and I would ask that you
They've
work
had
with the
communication.
SWCD. And ask, and go out there and request that they help you.
I've went in there and talked to them, Diane, yeah,
Yeah,
and they've approved it, but
Yeah.
we're happy to work with them
Yeah,
and
if-
follow all their regulations and preserve as much as possible, but, I mean, let's just say, I mean, since there's no ordinances this is violating, can we say like, you know, consult with them, work with them? We're happy to do that, we've already done that, we'll continue to do that. We don't want to destroy the land.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second
We
that.
have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, good discussion.
Thank you all.
All right, we have 4 applications for liquor and wine licenses. 3 of them are renewals. I would suggest we group those together. One is for Hollow Greenhouse, the other one's Master Plan Winery, the other one is Speckled Hen Farm. So I have a motion to approve those 3.
So moved.
Motion by Heather, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Diane, any further discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next one is motion to approve a temporary liquor and wine license for SJA Innovations LLC, doing business as First Down Brewing for an event. I believe that would be at the fairgrounds, weekend of March 21st through the 25th.
So moved.
Motion by Diane, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Heather, any further discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to board member reports. We don't have anything to report on since our last meeting.
You go ahead, Diane.
I had my emergency management budget last night. We have the assessor board, but hearing, or just a pre-hearing meeting. I had CCOP project board meeting. We've done budgets, it seems like every other day. Clerk of court, I did meet with the clerk of courts, and they have agreed that we can use the 3rd floor kitchen as a lactation room. We don't have, we've cleaned it, we have a chair in there. I will make a sign that says do not enter when the door is closed, and we're done with that. So we didn't have to remodel bathrooms or, so that's.
We had a MPO meeting, Iowa workforce meeting, budget meetings. I attended, worked with the Board of Health regarding, with their meetings regarding, how they're making changes to their budget. Let's see, assessor meeting, pretty much, it's all budgets right now.
I had several outside boards I sit on. It seems like 3 of the 4, kind of a little bit up in the air based on what's going on at the State House. aging resources, not to as great a degree as say, CICS, the VCAT. Not knowing how that's gonna get combobulated with other things. I did a board meeting, which, that one seems to be exempt for everything in the state house at this point. Lots of things up in the air. Guess we'll see where all that hits. All right, that's my reports. Old business, annex HVAC. Chip met with Excel to talk about the assessor's office has some tremendous heating and cooling issues. In my conversation with him, there's would be 3 units. One would be the compressor, which would go up on, I might be getting the verbiage wrong on this. That would go up on the roof, but their proposal is to put in large enough that we could add another mini split to that if needed. And he seemed that the difference between the two wasn't great.
Okay.
And then hopefully that would handle the heating and cooling issues versus completely revamping the HVAC in this building, which we knew was a little bit of a stretch when we did it. That's why the walls went all the way up.
Yeah, so is this something they've always had a problem with in the Southborough?
Remember when it was a bank that it was,
Well, we revamped so many different things when we did that.
well, when the county first purchased this, wasn't it, you were gonna use that as storage?
No, we didn't know what we just left it there as
So you
something
didn't-
will fit in here.
So you didn't put heating and cooling?
No, there's heating and cooling in there, but we didn't completely redo the building, because if you remember when this was a bank upstairs, it was mostly one big room surrounded by offices. So the HVAC kind of filtered out. But when we divvied it up into 4 spaces with those walls in there, that's why we didn't take those walls all the way up, because the contractors thought, if you take those walls all the way up, you're gonna really mess up your ventilation. By and large, it's worked all right with the exception of that corner.
Well, we need to fix it, so I'm.
Well, yeah, we can't be roasting and
It's too
squeezing.
cold.
So then the question would be, where would funding come from? Would that be
We did tap ARPA.
I kind of hate to do that too, but that's where I'm leaning.
I think it's the only place we can, we have a little cushion.
Let's talk about that the next time we get together for the budget, and then move forward with the resolution.
Because that's not gonna, we're gonna have that done right away. Should we decide it? It's not gonna be in the next.
Oh, the
budget.
HVAC?
We have to amend the current budget, right?
I don't see it getting kicked down the road into next year, next
No.
fiscal year.
Well, I don't want to suffer this summer.
And it's not gonna be getting cheap. You know what, let's,
Well,
I think we should,
our next meeting is on.
I think we should do ARPA.
and take the money out of it.
Let's tentatively plan to move forward with a resolution to do this out of ARPA at our next regular meeting.
Yeah.
And during budget meetings, we have
We'll mess
other
around.
thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Local option might be a possibility too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
That's, yeah.
Let's
we'll
get
look-
Shelley's input on that,
Yeah.
and see whether it's local option or ARPA.
Yep.
But one way or another, let's do that.
So, you got it?
General assistance ordinance.
So, you
Good
guys
input from the jury.
you're given direction to get input to look at our ordinance
That was really good, thank you.
based on, and I gave them some direction too, based on what they're encountering, what our ordinance says, what their challenges are, some vagaries, because they've come back with questions and I'm like, I don't know what that means, or I don't know if that's covered. So, I worked with them to kind of, to get to, in my previous notes, to come up with this. So they gave some really good feedback for us to consider to update the ordinance, based on some of their challenges. And I know we talked about possibly in the future, maybe considering including home health care as a possible general assistance income requirement, should that change in the future when, funding stops for that option for the county. So, but this is the initial what they're accounting for now.
For the funeral records here, I'm gonna read a couple things to you that they recommended from the funeral home side of things. Funeral recommendations. Allow newly widowed spouses to be exempted from the work/seeking work requirement if they were not employed or seeking employment prior to the deceased passing. Allow next of kin to apply for funeral assistance if the deceased lived alone. Next of kin need to live in the county. Next of kin applies on behalf of the deceased, showing that the deceased would meet all requirements for general assistance, or next of kin meet all general assistance requirements other than living in the same household. And the next point, allow the funeral home to apply for assistance on behalf of the deceased if they lived alone and neither a household member nor next of kin is available to apply on their behalf. So it will allow you guys to apply on that. One thing we talked about earlier, since this is an ordinance, which would need to be amended and hearing and all this stuff, I understand you guys are sitting on a couple potential $750 claims right now. We would consider an exception to allow those two, so we don't leave you hanging any further. That would require a resolution to come forward, and obviously we can't get into the details of who died and who the claim is or whatnot.
Just make
Thoughts on
them
how
whole.
to,
We'll just write the resolution to make them whole, we don't have to put it in.
Well, we need an invoice.
we kind of need a little something.
Yeah, he could send an
So
invoice.
if you guys could submit something for those two, as generic as possible, that, you know, Joe Blow passed away on XYZ and we provided this service, we can have, we've exhausted all possibilities, something to that effect.
Yeah, we can do that.
We would move forward with an exception that way while we.
What do you think about the recommendations thus far?
Did you say the next of kin would have
Next
to
of
live
kin,
in
the
Madison
final point
County?
is allow the funeral home to apply for assistance on behalf of the deceased if they lived alone and neither a household member nor next of kin is available. Little gray there, to apply on their behalf. So if you have a next of kin that's not participating, I read that as it will allow you to participate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Which
do
is
you-
kind of where we're at on these two, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the allow next kin to apply for assistance if the deceased lived alone, these are examples of what they think we could consider. We don't necessarily have to do all three.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like for instance, if they don't live in the county, but they would meet assistance requirements, we could include that if the deceased lived, because obviously the deceased can't apply for the assistance.
Obviously.
So,
And that's
Scary.
what other counties have done, is they base it on the deceased residents, not the next of kin
Right.
living in
Right,
Des Moines.
right.
Right.
So,
But let's say the next of kin lived somewhere in a different country, would we allow them to do it for them?
Well,
Well, if
the
it's not
benefit of
available.
The benefit is
So they
to the, for the deceased,
Yes.
who was a county
So
resident.
they could do it.
So basically, the struggle that Matura encountered is who do we use as the income requirement? Do we use the deceased, who obviously can't apply? Or do we use the next of kin, and the next of kin, chances are not gonna be living in the household unless it's a spouse. So what happens if the deceased lives alone? And say you have a next of kin who doesn't live in the house, can they apply, but then it doesn't meet the household requirement that's in the code? Or if the person doesn't live in the county, can they still apply? And then you're giving a benefit to somebody outside the county. So that's where they suggest we clean up what the ordinance says, because these unique scenarios are not covered.
Now, if this happens, they have exhausted, like, if there's a veterans would probably pick it up.
Yep.
They would go to Matura first, CICS, and everybody first, and this is the last draw, right? Is that correct?
generally, yes. Yeah, families come to us and say, I don't have anything, I have exhausted my options for any benefits. Veterans is the biggest one that's gonna help in these instances. I don't know of any other assistance programs that are going to step in that regard. So, yeah, that's generally what we see.
Looking at the points on here, on the second point, allow next of kin to apply for funeral assistance if the deceased lived alone. But then my initial thought is, next of kin need to live in the county, I would strike that.
Okay.
The second point, next of kin applies on behalf of the deceased, showing that the deceased would meet all the requirements for general assistance. That one I think is pretty good. The third one, next of kin can meet all general assistance requirements other than living in the same household. I think that's irrelevant.
Okay.
I would
Because
strike.
if it was a spouse, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if my estranged father passed away, I shouldn't be on that. I mean, compassionate.
We attempt. It doesn't always go that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you be
We
willing
understand
just to
that,
strike
yeah.
it out? Just take it out.
Yeah.
So I would strike
Strike.
point 1 and point 3, and then I think you've got something that would probably work with.
So now the other thing is too, what we don't want is someone to go to Ventura, get assistance.
That's right.
Then they come to the funeral home and get assistance. So I'm wondering if we should write it to
No.
where the funeral home goes directly to Ventura.
The funeral home would apply through Matura. Matura's the.
We would
Okay.
contact
They're the general
Ventura.
assistance.
So you would know that, because you're gonna exhaust veterans and mature and everybody before they go, yeah, so
Okay.
you've already tried that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the funeral home would be working with Matura.
Okay.
Yeah, so when the family comes to us, we would contact them just as we have a family that has a need. Have they talked to you already? You know, have they received assistance in the past? Just so we're in communication together, so they're not doubling up.
And
on
if they say
assistance.
no, what you might wanna do is encourage the family to do that, because there may be other assistance out there that they haven't tapped into. And Natura would have access to that,
Yeah.
other than the general assistance from the county. So I think everything needs to funnel through them, and this will give you a resource to do that, once we clear this
I
up.
think those are good improvements that we discussed, so we'll move forward with that. In the meantime, if you could
Send us-
submit some type of an invoice to the auditor's office like we discussed,
Yep.
and get that other stuff cleared up, so we don't need to hang anything on.
So do you want me to, start working on an ordinance change with Aaron to update this?
Are you saying you want to?
Not particularly, but since I'm halfway here, I might as well finish it out.
I don't think we're talking about.
It's not a lot.
It's
It's
a
not-
little
yeah.
simple
But
thing.
we completely revamped that ordinance 4 years ago.
Right, but what about the other points, about the utilities being more clearly defined, the income guidelines?
To me, sewer generally comes under the water bill. So I think you just apply water slide. I think that's kind of one, but it clarifies it.
It clarifies it, so that's what they're saying, is clarifying, and then also, do we want to include telephone or internet or not? I don't think that's
I
necessary.
don't.
Is it in there now or not?
Yeah.
No, it's not in there now, and I don't think we should.
I don't think we should.
But they just brought that up as a potential.
That
So-
gets kind of gray because you could have a high-speed internet.
Right,
Yeah.
and one gig to your house, that's
Yeah.
quite, yeah. So, okay, we'll leave that out, and then the other thing, the mortgage rent, lot rent, what came up, cause she asked me this one, is we had someone that had a mobile home, and, they were paying lot rent, but they didn't have a mortgage, the unit was already paid for,
But
so.
rent is covered.
So, yes, so, but there was a rent, but not lot rent, and she
I would
says,
say
do
it's the same
we do
thing.
this? And then
Just include it,
You
Heather.
included, that
Just
takes
say
the,
that-
it takes
just
the
include
ambiguity out of it.
take the
Say-
ambiguity.
Yeah.
And then are you, what about, like, for instance, if they are paying lot rent and a mobile home payment,
Rent's
cover both?
rent. I mean, you only cover it up to a certain amount, I think it's
Right,
$450.
yeah,
Right, okay, all right, then we just want to be clarified. And then increasing the income guideline,
125% poverty, which is very much.
you want to do that? Okay.
That's, how much is that a year?
I gave you, there was a
For a
chart,
family of 4,
I forgot.
there was a chart.
poverty is
Oh.
31.2,
Yeah.
125 is 39,000.
Yeah, so if you had two people, poverty is 20,440, 125% is 25,550, so that's still very low.
Yeah, divide that by 12 months.
So, okay, and then, let's see, so, what about the widowed spouses?
What's your question?
So what on there is, are they exempted from the work or seeking work requirement if they are not employed or seeking employment prior to the deceased passing? And what that was is, if you have a spouse who is a, stay-at-home spouse, and they have their spouse pass away, they're not gonna be seeking work right away. They're gonna be grieving. So the thing was, do we want to exempt them from the seeking work requirement if they wanna if they are seeking a benefit for the deceased? Like if someone dies and you have rent due in 2 weeks, and they reach out for assistance, do we wanna say no? you're
This
not
is regarding
seeking
the
work?
funeral portion.
Yes, funeral.
I still don't think I understand.
Okay, so say you're an older couple, and the wife has never worked in her life, her husband passes away, who's the major breadwinner. One of the requirements under our ordinance is, in order to seek any benefits, including funeral benefit, you have to be actively seeking work or working. So the question was, is do we wanna deny a spouse of somebody whose husband or wife recently passed away, who is a major breadwinner, and deny them this benefit because they are not complying with that?
And there's no age requirements on it. This person could be 80 years old.
Correct. Correct, so that's why the material wanted to see clarification to say, with the exception of this, they're not working, they're not seeking work because the person just died yesterday or 2 weeks ago and they're looking for a funeral.
Okay, so let's do this. They meet all the requirements and they're 25 years old and the wife stays home with the kids all the time. The husband passes away.
So on that case, she would be denied a funeral benefit because
She
she's
would
not
be,
working
she's
or
not
actively
working,
seeking.
but I think, I wonder, could you put a clause in there that, some stipulation that they might, if capable, seek employment? I mean,
Well,
If,
the thing
if
is,
there- and there are situations that you're talking about, I understand the hypothetical, paying a $750 funeral bill is the least of their concerns.
well, yeah, no, I totally understand that, but this came up because someone was turned away, because their spouse just died. They have never worked a day in their life, and now they, like you said, there's a lot of concerns out there. They wanna be able to pay a funeral bill, they don't have the money, they come to the
Might pay
county.
food, rent, or anything else either.
Correct.
And
So-
that's gonna be on the very bottom, okay,
So that's what I'm saying is do we want to, Matura suggested a particular exception to the work-seeking work requirement if that person
I think that's okay.
was not,
It's just-
okay.
It's mostly just trying to take.
Are you gonna strike that?
No, I'm not saying to strike that, I'm
Just
saying, do
in-
we want that? Because it was a valid point. If you are a stay-at-home mom raising kids, homeschooling or whatever, or you're an elderly person who's never been employed because your husband took care of you your whole life, now he passed away, you're left with all these bills, the last thing you're gonna be thinking about is seeking work.
I think of farm wives who worked their whole lives on the farm that never had a job off the farm.
Right.
So, okay,
So this would just in this
just
one
clarify.
particular, instance of a deceased passing, we would exempt the seeking work requirement.
These are relatively limited. All last year you had
yes,
2 weeks requirement. Or this-
So,
just exempt.
but this is brought up in Matura, because it
Yeah,
happened.
it's valid. It's
Okay,
valid.
all right, great, let's bring that forward.
And then streamlining the application process.
Yes, make it simple, and if the person isn't capable of doing it, allow them to do it.
Yeah, they didn't give a lot of explanation on streamlining the application process to match other counties. They're gonna need to they're gonna
They
need to
gave us
expand on that.
examples of other counties' applications, which they thought were better. So I can work with them to maybe create a new one. and
Make
put
it as simple.
Let's see if
as
we
a
can
voice-
do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
As an ordinance, it'll come back forward as a draft before we even.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
We
right,
can then
sounds
take
good.
it apart.
So I guess I drew the short straw on that. Is that what you're saying?
I'm hoping it's not it's a big ask. If you can find a Word document of this, it's
As
just.
Matt Schultz would have said, you talked the most.
Yeah, okay.
All right. We got a new business. Sheriff, you've been sitting there a long time. Talk to me about early coverage.
Real quick, I just wanna run something by you guys. Earlham approached me, police department did in the city, about us helping them out with coverage after midnight throughout the week. We've had lengthy discussions on what it would take. They proposed $6 an hour from midnight to 6 a.m. every night. It comes out to what, did we figure out, what, 12,000?
12,000 a year.
What's the hours?
It'd be roughly midnight to 6 a.m.
Yeah, give or take an hour, but yeah, till 6 a.m. in the morning. It's like 11 or 12 at night to 6 a.m. in the morning.
Okay, it's $6 an hour every day.
7 days.
Does that mean if there's a call during that time you respond, or does that
Yes.
mean you're expected to?
So we're,
Well, there would be no set time that we have, we run it like St. Charles and Truro, where we just kind of aim for a certain number. I don't even think we'd do that up there. I think it'd be just they would have all the police coverage in the daytime still. Nighttime, we would respond to calls.
so you're gonna run it like St. Charles and Truro, only at night, from midnight to 0600, and you're gonna run it at night, and they're gonna pay us like St. Charles and Truro?
Correct.
Oh,
Okay, here's the catch.
okay.
I can't do it with who I got. I can't, we're thin enough.
Well, you
All right.
asked for a new guy, I thought we were,
Well, here's what I'm proposing. Let me go back to my bat cave redo my budget, give you two budgets, one with what it would cost to add a full-time deputy versus keeping the budget I have now with a part-time deputy. That's the difference. The revenue part of this, there's $142,000 more revenue coming in this year that wasn't coming in last year. We got Winterset's paying an extra $40,000 in dispatching. Earlham's paying an extra $10,000 in dispatching. I-35's paying $80,000 for a deputy. And then if 15,000 or 12,000 is added to any coverage from midnight to 6 a.m., we're looking at $142,000. I want to go back and do my numbers so I can come to you guys with, okay, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is what my expected revenue is going to be. My numbers are a little more, they're more accurate right now as we get through the year. I just got my disbursements claim shot. I should be able to give you a very good snapshot of where we're at right now and where we expect to be. With our union negotiations coming up, there's still a lot of unknowns. I get it. But I'm asking if I could go back, redo my budget, my revenue, and then present it to you guys, because I know they're not finalized yet.
Now, we're long, here's kind of where I'm budget-wise, because you know, we've got negotiations this week with both unions, so the last time we had a budget meeting, we kind of pumped the brakes, we need to wait till we're done with union negotiations.
Right.
So hopefully that means that next week we'll be resuming budget meetings.
Okay.
Do we want him to wait until that's done and then redo his budget and then submit it?
Maybe let's let him wait till after Friday, and then he can go
Well,
back.
yours is Thursday.
Shelley has us set up really good on our spreadsheet. It's not hard.
Oh,
It's not hard at all.
We
But
would
when you
know after the
fix
unions what,
yeah.
you know.
Well, you'll be there for those, so.
Yeah, I'll do it. I guess what I'm here for is just to run this by you guys, see if you guys have any objections or anything like that.
I don't have any objections.
Take a hard
I have
stand
no
against it.
objections.
How are you guys covering the midnight to 6 a.m. with the room now?
We do, well, a lot
Somebody
of
gets
times,
woke up?
we're on call, we're in bed, we get
Right.
called out, tell them we get dressed and out, the deputies are usually there already anyway. So,
Right now how it's handled, if a call comes in Earlham and they don't have anybody out, they're notified. And then they decide on their own, their police department makes the decision if they're gonna come out or not, or if they're gonna just punt until the next morning. If it's an emergency, a domestic, a bad car accident or something like that, we respond to assist them, like we would Winterset. We assist them, we're not the primary agency. If we did go this route, let's say we did take over Earlham after midnight, and we did not increase our coverage, Earlham will suffer. We will suffer, our services will, when Bob's screwing around town up, running stop signs at 2 in the morning, that's really not a, okay, we gotta leave Truro, this domestic, we have to go up there. That's gonna get put on the back burner.
Well, by the time you get there,
They're
they're gone
They're
anyway.
gone.
And it's a big county, it really is. If you go to the northeast, west corner of the county, and drive highway speeds to Truro, it takes an hour. So, it's a big county. We would have to have another personnel to even consider it.
So Chief, how many, can you, just for the sake of the public here, can you explain how many officers you have, coverage?
3 full-time officers. I'm the only one that lives in the city, and one that lives within the restrictions of the policy. But we don't get paid for on-call. And then the other guy lives over by Guthrie County. He drives, and he can't afford, you can find a place in Earlham, usually it's too expensive, or just to find a place is hard to find. So, just to help me out, I'm asking the county to come and cover 11 or 12 at night until 6 in the morning.
So basically, the concern is because of the fact that it lives so far out, the response time is, oftentimes our deputies will get there quicker than,
Yeah, a lot of times they do.
okay.
I'm okay with this, Jason.
Okay, and I don't have any concerns with it other than I wanna make sure we're in a good spot, Earlham's in a good spot. If I just take that money and run, and we don't prepare for it, we're gonna pay for it. But let me, if I could, go back, look at my stuff, bring you guys new numbers, and see if we can move stuff around and make it happen.
Well, you'll know Friday what the union
It's
says.
yours, Thursday, Friday.
I think Friday.
Teamsters is Friday afternoon.
No, it's next Thursday. Thursday. So then you'll know.
Yeah, they're-
It's Thursday the 29th.
Yeah.
So,
So then we'll know for sure by then.
yeah,
And then you'll know when you and Shelley can plug in the numbers. Okay.
All right.
that's all, I didn't need to
Good
know.
information, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You bet, thanks.
Okay, credit card policy, it sounds like Aaron was working on that. We talked about the levy a little bit, or what we should be at the phone, I think we decided to kind of punt on that for the time being. Okay, courthouse meeting coming up here in a few minutes. Comp plan, any updates on that?
Yeah, we finished the draft review last night, it was a marathon evening. There's one chapter that I'm gonna work with the contractor on to finalize that. He'll take about a month and a half, 2 months to get a final draft. So the question to the board now is, do we want to see it first before they schedule their public meetings? How do you wanna do that?
Oh, I wanna look at all of
I
it
think so.
before.
Okay,
I wanna go through everything and put my little stickies all over it.
okay.
And most of that should be
Yes.
pretty much resolved as far as typos or questions, or hey, this isn't quite right.
And some of the things that you guys commented on were actually ordinance things, so they were actually stripped out. So you'll have a much smaller book, I think.
A lot of mine I said for ordinances, I mean, but, and I know you changed plumber income, cause a lot.
Yes. That was a huge discussion that we had, not this last night, but in the previous, where they thought that was miscommunicating what the actual income was, and a lot of the board didn't feel that we should put anything in there. A lot of the committee didn't feel that we should put that in there as
It's so
important.
Well, and spend it on her.
And the other thing that came up too last night is there's that section in there about public communication, and basically where it gives you all the feedback from the interviews that the contractor did with the stakeholders, schools and stuff like that. So, and a lot of that stuff is contradictory. So we thought that we would put that in, either remove it completely or put it in as an appendix. So there was discussion both ways. The first way was, this is good information to know, but should it be in our comprehensive plan? It's just the opinions of a few people. The other side was, well, this will show that we actually reached out to multiple people, we didn't just do this in a vacuum. So we settled on making it as an appendix, but I did say I would discuss with you guys and what we thought.
I think that makes sense. You said, as part of our plan, we reached out to the students of blah, blah, blah schools, and this group, their comments are attached as appendix. That what you kind of.
That's kind of what we were doing, we wouldn't include it in the main part of the, because the concern that some had, including myself, was, I don't want it to be in the comprehensive plan, so people think that this is the stuff we're gonna build ordinances
It
on.
read a little bit wonky, like, one might think, I think the sky is blue, I think the sky is gray, you know, it's
Right,
that kind of.
so that was my concern, is that once you have it in the comprehensive plan, I don't want it to open the door to things that unintended consequences, so.
Do you feel that it was all I thought it was kind of unnecessary, some of it. I know it gave people a voice,
It's,
but
I kind of felt that way on some of the ones they interviewed, however, the consultant said, Keith said, well, you want, as part of the comprehensive plan, you want to let people know that you're actually seeking input and not just doing it in a vacuum.
do it as an appendix.
The challenge is how big is the sample? You know, if you interview
Yes.
4 people,
Yes.
that's not really a
It's not a
sample.
big sample, so, but again, that was what I said, but the point was valid is, you know, we did do work to seek input.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be the will of the people.
Right, so
Just do
you
an
guys are
appendix.
okay to do.
I think it's-
I think so.
All right, ordinance review, we've talked about one.
One ordinance, so I will be working on that.
Anything else on that front?
No,
If not, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Motion by Diane, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Heather, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, we're adjourned at 11:00.
So we will